Okay, this thing is working. How come you don't see the picture? Oh. Amém.
Getting ready? Huh? Yeah, I know. What's the next week?
Of course you can get ready.
Of course you can. All behind you. Of course you can, you're ready. What day is it, husband?
Right, so we're holding on talking Beis.
That's very fun.
He's probably coming back before the Khatim.
Probably.
You never know if he's coming.
Oh.
Thanks, sweet.
You're
So we're holding by the kids the previous chapter, so what we'll do is just go quickly through the Korbanos, show Bira, the Noiga. We saw that the union of Korbanos was a Bira, the union from Klippus Noiga. Holiday said they were Rosa the Korbana, was Seila ad Rosa the Insay. There was an aliyah into the union of Makif, but it was a Makif that we saw, it's only Moisif in the Pnimi, it wasn't a Makif, Amiti, Nimsha, but even Shamaki. And we saw that Dam is a Rashich Sadomim, but that's indicatory of the Dam of Korbanos, the union, the Taivas Mitzad. The Klippus Nega, the Rasichas Adomim, V'chelev, I'm sorry, V'chelev Inyan Atainuk. It's one on it, the Chelev. In the Korbanos, that was Nikra Validea, Miskara Validea, Mispecha, that's the Inyan of Oinek. Chelev is the Inyan of Tuftan. V'oinek, Ariseh, B'chinas Reach, Shemagia, B'chinas Hoer Makif, that reaches Samnam. Into the union of Makif, Achu, Kemoy Reach HaMaichol. We were chalik in this chapter between the Reach from cooked food, but the union of Reach Macholim is the union of Reach of Ketores, which is Reach Be'etem. So we saw that the union of the Reach HaMaichol, Shegam V'Hareach, Lo Yesh Ischadshus HaChayis. We saw that the Reach HaMaichol is only moisif an effect and a tuftam in the etzem achila. It's not a inyan mamish b'fnei atzma. It's not that from the Reach HaMaichol the mensch would be able to have a chayas b'fnei atzma. The inyan, the Reach HaMaichol, there's a moisif a tuftam in the etzem achila. So therefore we saw that in Ruchaniya, so Inyan, this is Aishchachas, but it's only Aishchachas Michutz Pnimi, which is Moisif into the Pnimi. Because Sokas of Reach is not Mamish Pnimi. But it's Zareach, within Yoni is to be only Moisif, Chayas Noisefet, in the end of their Pnimi. V'cheinu Baveda Ulamela. Makif Meir Begiloi Raksha Meteisef Bioer Pnimi. That comes as added an extra surface, an extra hoisofa, chayas, in the pnimi. In other words, in the air which is shai balav, it was staushlos. Kein hu dvavei, hu mipnei shemagia b'chinas chitzenius hakesa. In other words, emes oil makiv. However, an oil makiv which in yone is shai chesof to istaushlos oilamas. Arich is the inyan from chitzenius hakesa, and arich is shy to the inyan of the spheres and mamira to it's like the spheres how they are and a higher madrega. The mamira it's shy so even though it's a makif for him, but it's shy to say the staushot. The Elul reach hakitoiras ukamay reach absomim. In other words, that's reach be etem, that's the etem inyan reach shemeishiv es hanefesh, that it has an effect. Not just that it's moisif achayas in another inyan, no, it has the ability to be mamish ma'ira the inyan hanefesh and to be moisif hanefesh. Like we saw that if somebody's mariach ayin from reach chodev b'shas ayisalfus l'mashal, well, that causes a gilui b'chazor of the yoni hanefesh, which means that it must have come in the shorosh mokke hanefesh. And that's meishivas hanefesh mi mekoyrei v'shorosh. Edach etziman that's a inyan that's magia be etem hanefesh. It has the ability to be magala the etem hanefesh mi helomei or mi havdalosei mi inyan agu. Ulamayla, we saw in Elakus Lamaila, who beginners Ketura Iloa Datika. We discussed that earlier in earlier chapters that Atiko, Mitzad Etzem is Kashas of Ayin safe in Ishtalshel Za'ilamas, Alidei Atik. Then Atik is called Kutra, Kutra Kesher. Kutra Iloa. Etzem ha'ishabres of Ein Sefer is lagamri lamayla mikol kesher imayilamas with the Indian sokos of Ilamas. Of how he is in that madrega is mudal the Adayim Indian Ilamas with the Sedinian from Atiklos and Nertagwer Venivda. However, sokos of it does occur a certain kesher there which makes it possible for the, we'll maybe talk about that a little further as we go along. Was it that Nasina Sef Shori as Alidei the Kesher of Atik that Sokos the Aaron Sef should be Nimshach into Shtaushel Sa'il. Of how it is in that Kesher, it's in an even $1. Like that. Va'akilui Ubchina So'er Makiv. What is Nimshach Alidei Shemagiyim through the union from Reach Chorik B'Meyucha Magiyim be'etzem hanefesh. Amamela das is mamshich u'magale b'chinas ha'oyer makiv. However, we saw rak b'chinas chitonius akesa. We saw the chiddush at the end of the Maimer that afal pi, but the aveda the inyan hareach is magia in etzem hareach, whereas the inyan antika mamish. However, the Amshocha Mishon is only an Amshocha which is still shaykhs to Chitanias. In other words, that the Kilui of Amshocha is a inyan from Chitanias, a Kesa Bilvad, and that's a inyan of Tzokos. It does have a certain shaykhs to say the Histaushlas. Raks is a Makif Lahim. In other words, it's the inyan what's Mavur, Bahabi Makimis. The inyan from Makif HaKoreh. In other words, it's a Makif B'kol Madrega Kamoishu. There's one on, there's Makifim Protihim, the inyan Ha'ilamas, which means it's also Am Shocha from Chitenius Akesa, but the Etzem Aveda and the Etzem Aliyah was in Pnimius Akesa. So that's Montzach, that's Foretzach. Abio, if already the Aliyah is in Pnimius Akesa, then why is it that we would say that the Amshach is only Lefi Erech, the Mishtalshas, Lefi Erech, the Mekablim, if already magim bekutra ilo and the etzem kashas, and he ain't safe with the ilamas, and the amshocha should also be even kosher. Now the emes is that we're going to see later on that en chanami in another madrega in Keteiros, that is in effect the case, and that's in the Keteiros of Yom Kippurim. That's the Keteiros, which was Mishkalo was brought by the Kohen Gadol into the Kodesh HaKadoshim b'Yom Kippurim. But that particular Keteiros, that's stuck in Megala Pnimis Atik Mamish and the Etzem Kesher of Kutre Ilor, it's Megala into the union, the Elamus, even from Makif Amiti, the Makif, which is Makif. Ober, we'll see that so great is that Makif that despite the fact that it's a Makif, Mutter, the Gamri Mio Elamus, it's Puyel Beetle and Gilui Sokoso. But there are beetle color Elamus color Makablim into the and therefore the avoid of Yom Kippurim is the Gamri Lamaila Miko Inyan. Chitani is Lamaila Miko Inyan Inyonim Amuru Mozim Li'il Zecha for Achila Zecha for Al Inyonim, and therefore the Amida on Yom Kippurim is Madrega Kazu. However, we have to say that B'derech Efshe we could say that here the Inyan HaKeteiros, even though it's a Inyan from Lamaila Mi Shaychas Ela Pinimiyas, and it's not just Moisif in the Pinimiyas, it's a Inyan from Makif Amiti, and this is Nimsha we'll see in the beer, the Kashis that the Maimah that it is a Makif Amiti. I have to say that so this is Nimshach, only the Inyan from Bechinis Chitanias HaKeseh, because this is a Isarusa Delay, Tate Isarusa Delay Eila. We can say that so the Ika had Goshe here in the Inyan Keteiros Shabahechal, and the Cloud Inyan from Keteiros is the Yisraelis of the Nivroim, and even from Avodah Shalahem, and the Bittul Shalahem, but even Shal Chutz, Yitzir, Megidrei HaGbolas. Amir Sof Kosov, Afiro in Ayin from Makif, Afiro where the Nivra is Lamaila Mi Koicheso, Mugbolim. Nonetheless, it's Mavur, Bahabi Makimas, at Sof Kosov, the Nivra can only be Magia Mitzat Koicheso who in Yonim, which are Shaykh Sof Kosov to the Sheresh Anivroim. And so here we can say that there's well known the famous dogma for the Mayon that there was in the Beis of Mikdash Rishon. From there they drew all the water into the Azorah, the Ayin Item it was called. He said, and from Dotom say, so it's put down that was Kof Gimel Amma. The height of the Beis of Mikdash on the mountain was higher up. It's Kof Gimel Amma, therefore when the water came down, it could only go up into a height of Kof Gimel Amma. They used to pour down a pipe and it would go up, fill up a certain pipe, but it would only go up as high as where it came from. That's apparently a physics cloud, that you can only sort of fill something up as high as where it comes from. And so Chassidus brings a raya from that you can only, if you're a Nivra and you got the Hagbolas of a Nivra, you can only be Mesera ad Mokiv Shatan Nimshachta Mishal. This is the Indian that wherever the Nivra there's Ad Gosha, Al-Avidose, and so he can only come, I feel, Mitamakiv, and I feel where he's Chutz Migidri Kelim, Agbolas. He can only come in as a darga with the so Shayat to the Indian of Gidrei Oilamas Nivroya. So therefore, Eino Hanami, he reaches into Pnimisati. And this is a Madrega Gavoya Muvdelas over the Gilui Mishon. It's only in the Indian of Chitanias, in the Indian from Chitanias Kesser. And so we have to say that the Chavzai could just go into Chitanias Kesser. What do they need to go into Pnimis Kesser and only get the Revach is only from Chitanias Kesser? So we have to say that when it comes to Madregas Misuk Zeh, that in order to get to the Chitanias, then you have to I feel it to the chitainis when I in Madrege, you have to have a certain nagia in the pneumius. If otherwise, you won't even come into the chitainis. I'll do it. Okay, give me maybe a dogma. I'll put him with Derek Shiloh, Derek Moshe. That we find in Kuntus Eitz Chaim, the Rebbe's Marich over there, that the difference between Yehuda Eloah and Yehuda Tator in Shema Yisrael and Baruch Shem, Kved Malchus Elam Boy. And he says that the Avodah of Rov and Nishomas, but the saying Elul is only in Baruch Shem, it's only in the Iniv and Yehuda Tator. Ein lahem kilo Avodah Musaderes in the Iniv and Yehuda Eloah. That's L'mayla Me'asagosam, L'mayla Klei. However, he says over there, there's a whole big chapter and a whole big beer over there, and it's going to say it's Chaim, that if you want to have Yehuda Tator, how it should be, then even the Neshamas, but Ike in Yonam is Yehuda Tator. That's Ike Avidosam. In order that should be Kamoisha Tzorah, they have to have a Nagia in Yehuda Eloah. Therefore, they have to be Mishtadel. Shema Yisrael to be masig, to have a shtiku, hergish, shtiku, hagua, herikol, reaching into the inif and Yehuda Eloah. Well, you want the avodah from Yehuda Tator can be how it has to be. Otherwise, even the avodah from Yehuda Tator just be herikol, loivo even ha mshpia, but teich keilehem, but teich chayeh. We said we can borrow here the same way that it's Sokoso. You want to have the Amshochef in Chitanius Akesa, for the Inyonim Shalomala Me'agbola, as much as you can, mitzad your Aveda, you have to have a certain Nagia, in a certain ability to be Messiah in the Sherosh Amiti, and the Bitla Amiti from Kutra Eloah Mamish, of Sokoso. Since the Amshocha is Lafi your Aveda, Sochas, it's got to do with the Keter Shebahechel, Erev Snimshach Rach in an even it's Meya Mitzad the Bechin Shechitainis Sheboy to the Indian which is Shaykh, Lavidos Aniroim Kan Alpha people said this a Patecha Hechel, Avasochas, it's Lafi in Yonam, Af, Sheika Aisera is Hoya Patecha Ayat. You and tell Pimash is poorly up for a great starlet. Bein in Kesha Diatic. We spoke in that in very great starlet, if anybody remembers, it's quite a bit of learning back. We spoke about the Ika is Mamutza. You know, Sefer Ilamas was Be'emes in Chokman Stimor. We said that Atik is moved over Neatakli Atme, and Arid is already Mamish Rosh, and Neatzolim. So those are the two Bechinas Sheba Mamutza. Of a Sokosov, they're moved Olim Zemizeh. Atik is Atik, and that's already Rosh. How do they get together? There must be some point which binds them together. Didn't Yisrael become a Bechinas Mamutza? There must be some Nakuda. Emtoyas Mamish which just binds the two Bechinas Sheba Mamutza. So what we're talking about that was a muzzle. V'noiter, if you remember, we spoke about the whole thing of a muzzle. V'noiter, but that's the pneumis that he would give him the Sarachamim when he brings over the whole Arichas Ayin. And we said that the Kutra Eloah, that was the Etzem Mishkashas of there in Seif Miti Eilamaz. And then at the end of that whole Ois over there, we were mazbeh that there were two inyonim in Kutra Eloah. There was the Kutra Eloah of Atik out Shaykh Sochosota Eilamaz. That inyoni is the Mamutza Bein Oyer in Seif Kol Eilamaz and Kol Ishtausvaz. And then we brought that there was a inyan out that Kutra Eloah is a Mamutza between the Ayin Seif and the Nishomas Yisrael. And the Dinan and Nishomas in Yonam is Lahoyer as Eilam, and Sokosof in Yonam is to be Mamshich Ha'el Chodesh with the Ganze. In what he's going to mention in Mamshich Sof with the Ganze Bio. So that was what we saw, that there were two Inyonim in the Mamutza from Atik. There was how Atik is a Mamutza of Klolos Abrio, and then it's a Mamutza Bein Erin Seif and the Oilamos Alidei Nishomas, not Alidei Arich, no, Alidei the Nishomas Bilvat. That's what we learned at the end of Reish Tav. So there was the Rebbe, Sheyesh Efresh Godel Beinayim. A very big difference between the Iskashas that the Eivsha has with Oilamos Alidei the Inyan from Kutra Iloah, is the Iskashas that she achieved in the Oilamos through the Iskashas with Nishomas is Yisrael. Tehine Keser Elyain Ubechinas Mamutza Bein Oirin Seif Lo Oilamos. When Nishomas Yisrael, I'm sorry, Slicha. Tehine Keser Elyain Ubechinas Mamutza Bein Oirin Seif Lo Oilamos Unishomas Yisrael. Beis Amadrega Shaboi Bechinas Atik Ve'ari. So he said that it's a inyan from a mamutza, Keser Elyain, Bein Oirin Seif Lo Oilamos and Nishomas Yisrael in the both Madregas Shaboi. Now we're going to see, however, that when it comes to the Nishomas Yisrael, it's more like one Madrega rather than two separate Madregas. What that's the inyan from Atik Ve'ari. We do a sheyesh Beis Madregas b'mamutza. Now, when he says here Beis Madregas b'mamutza, he doesn't mean that in every mamutza there are Beis Madregas. Now, what he means is that in every concept of a mamutza, or in the, not every concept, but in the closest concept of mamutza, then there are two different types of mamutzoy. Not that in every mamutza there are two Madregas, but in mamutza itself there are two Madregas. However, mamutza hamafsik, a mamutza which joins together to bechinas which are all be'erach one to the other, of it does it through a dover ha-mavdil b'nei, or mafsik b'nei. U'kamei al-dera moshe shnei b'nei adam shene'achozim b'cheivo ze b'roisha ha'alef v'ze b'roisha ha'sheni. Two men was a halt, a strick, and they were holding a rope. Shali they say, "Ein mischabrim." They have something, there's something where they join up one to the other. Ariachevo, however, mafsik beinayim. True, there's a kesher between them, and as long as they're holding the rope, then they're bound together, and their movements are sort of guiding one the other through that achiza. Aber sof the mamutza is mafsik beinayim. V'yesh mamutza she'eino mafsik, and there's another type of mamutza what isn't mafsik. No kol inyona is only to be mechaber the two together, but even atzmi, until you could almost say that they become like etzem echad. In other words, that all the mamutza did was to take a higher madrega in the makabel and bind it up with the etzem. In other words, the etzem of the makabel bound itself up with the etzem of the mashpia, and it's like the two etzems joined together, and the makabel is makabel from his etzem, how it's mechuber with the etzem of the mashpia. Which comes to say really there's not really a davar mafsik b'nei, it's just a higher bechina shebazeh, which is his etzem. They went up and joined up into the etzem of the mashpia. So, and therefore we have to say that ulai b'derech efsheh kommen sagen, and it will become clearer as we go along. The inyan, but ulai noch and lema that the mamutza is like more one-sided here. The mamutza is really mitzad the makabel, and the etzem of the makabel is mischaber in the etzem of the mashpia, or even that's mamish the mashpia. In other words, that in the mamutza of the elements the mashpia gives down, and the makabel has a certain higher point, and all this sort of gets together. In the even the mamutza ha'atzmi, the mamutza she'eino mafsik, then we could say that only the makabel, he rises up into a Ayin, which is atzmi, compared to what he is al derech harov. That's the Ayin agolish boy, and that's mamish mischaber in the etzem of the mashpia. But that was kommt es, really, it's not a Ayin von Mamutza al derech harogel, nor das a kilo, Iskasha seba bezeh. The only thing is, had the mashpia not made that kilo of himself into the Ayin from Kutra, the Ayin from, then maybe it might not have been shy that the Makabel reached that Madriga. So therefore we could say that there is a certain Yerida also mitzad the mashpia. Of a so it's a inyan of atzmiyah shaboy mamish. So kilo kumtes that the two atzmis join together, and there's not really any dover which is mavdil b'neiam yoter. And we'll see more about that as we go on. Now when we say the mashal, we're taking now the first case. We're taking the case of the mamutza hamafsik. Now this is a well-known mashal in the works of the Rebbe Mishmos Ayin, and there's a bigger readers about this in some of our in Pasha Vayishlach. So we may have to borrow certain nakudik the Rebbe himself sends us to some of the Behemshech Abiyah. So this is a very dachastic marshal. What we have to study carefully was it the Teichen HaBiyah and the Teichen Ayin. So what was the Ayin van Turgeman? Shebeina Mashpila Makabel. Can we be a mayhem? The Ika Ayin Ramakubal was in the time of the Chachmei Gemara, particularly in the time of the Amorayim. Shahoyu Ma'amidim Maturgeman, they used to put like a translator, as you might call him, Mipnei Sha'achacham Hadoireish, the Chacham Amiti, that he was the one who was really making the drosha, but that was one of the Chachmei HaGemara. Chacham Hadoireish, Hoyamudo Be'erach, Hayamudo Be'erach. He was completely moved out, even from Ein Areich, Sha'am, if they'd have heard the drosha from the Chacham HaTeiros, they wouldn't have been able to be makabel anything. It would have been mevavel them bilvad. It's had pshitas in yoneihem legabi the Chacham HaTeiros. They wouldn't be. Huh?
The higher the Chacham is, the more he can more the
well, yes and no. You see, here we're not talking so much about a marshal. It wasn't so much that he used to give Mashalim and the Matogam gave him over to Mashalim. The Chacham HaTeiros in this particular case is more concerned with the Inim and Halachas. They used to darshan Inim and Halachas HaTorah. And they used to show, how they connected with the Pesuki HaTorah v'chulu. Bekitza. But this was more a drosha al derech, not al derech opinions, but al derech halachas v'chulu. Al became the Makablim were very simple people. They weren't able to be masik. There was a certain. Therefore, they had to have a maturgaman between the and therefore the Indian of a marshal here is not so shy, because it was more a Indian from what you might call gufei Torah rather than just inyonim from Hasoget Sater. So therefore, he said they used to have the Chacham HaTeiros was moved over Erech. Sha'am lo yochel mekabel. Okay, or your tzadik li is maturgeman. They had to put like a translator, like a, how do you call it, an interpreter, as you might say, between him and the people. Shekibul ashpoa me'achacham. He was makabel, the shefa, from the Chacham, Ubo Ashpoa Bekela v'Chushal. Now that's not right to say that he was just like a funnel. That's not true. He wasn't just a funnel to give over, because if he was, then he would have been very close to the Chachmas HaDoirish. He would have been basically the same thing. Therefore, he wouldn't have been able to get it over to the Makablim below him if he just gave over in the form of therefore we have to say that there's an Inyan in this Maturgaman, what the Inyan is Misyached with his with his kishrenas. In other words, what we call here his chushim and his kelim, that the Inyan is misyachid in him. And since he's close to the Am, and the Rebbe is going to make a diuk shortly, that he's closer to the Am than he is really to the Chacham. Amitis Amuvan, he's got more, and therefore he doesn't have to make any real tzimtzum to get it down to the people. After he's been makabel from the Chacham, then more or less it's a dover yosho and a tzimtzum b'miktas until it goes over to the people. Which means that the way he gets it from the Chacham must be even show kimat ein aroich also, because if it comes in such a way that it's able to go over the derech shkabel to the Am, even which is not behelam godel miyem, then he must have taken the ashpor eikshu. He must have in some way been, as we might call it in Merachois, he's been mishana the shefa. He's changed it in such a way that it can go over to the makablim. So the shaila is, how does that shinui occur? Is it the pshat that the chokhmas harav is mishtaneh alidei some mishtadlos that the Rav made, and it's mishtaneh, and therefore it's miskabel in his chushim because it's been mishtana b'yatzim. Or do we say no? That in Emerson the Rav doesn't mishana anything. No, the Rav gives over in a zariv, and from that a new type of seichel, a new geder in the whole inner of the seichel, and that comes down, and that's able to be miskabel in the chushim of the, and that's been in Mamela Nimtzor here. So there does occur now a shinui, because that shinui is already making a charge to the Am. Or the shinui mitzad the Maturgam, and this mitzad the Rav, which means that so it can't be the same seichel that the Rav had, because if it is, then he's not able to get it. So there is some sort of a jump in error between the Rav to the Maturgam. But we're going to see it's a very interesting idea. It's an idea that it's like a creature of a dilu be'erah from the Rav to the Beis Ishtana. It's not trying to say that the Rav was Mishana. He just gave over in Azar, even that it'll sort of come down in a way that it'll be shayat that the Maturgaman, he should be Mishana. And he's stuck in. If there's a shinoi, then he's the one that's good of the shinoi. So let's see how that works. It's a very fascinating principle. So he said, yeah, okay. That in that coming, that bior into Kela v'chusho of the Maturgaman, it was already be'erach ha'makablim, and therefore all he had to do was make certain, what you might call, hoirodas, Ayin, but he didn't have to alter a great deal. It was already be'erach to the makablim. It was already possible for him to be more or less ready to give it over. Harei ha'makablim kiblu es ha'oyer seicho k'moi shehu lefi chushei ha'maturgaman. It comes to us what the people are makabel is the way that it's become, the seichel harav has become shayat to the chushim and the oifen ha-seichel of the maturgaman. In other words, what they're hearing now is what the maturgaman says, not what the Rav really said. On the other hand, we can't say that they hear something completely different, chas v'sholem. So therefore he said that Eichel ha-maturgaman, seichel haravi, lefi chushei ha-maturgaman, aber etzem seichel harav hu behelem legamrei bohem. Bohem meaning the makablim. Yeah, when they get it, or in the chushim, maybe we could say, I feel in the chushim of the maturgaman, it's completely behelem, the seichel harav. So that what they get is not, any real gila, the seichel harav. It's how the seichel harav has come to them, in the chushei hamaturgam. Whatever we say that we call him a maturgaman, because a maturgaman is a mensch that comes from the word letargem, and letargem means how do you call it, übersetzen, in Yiddish expression, means to put over into another oifen altogether. If you change from one language to another, then you've been mashana the whole Indian into another language. A maturgaman is a mensch with so he, as it were, delicately and significantly nonetheless alters the Indian, and he literally translates it in order that it should go over into the Makablim. Therefore, the Ike change in the whole thing and the Ike possibility that it should reach the Makablim is in the Maturgaman. And he's like the whole key, and that's why we had to have him. Otherwise, it wouldn't have been Shai. He said, "V'gam eichel Maturgaman." So you might say, well, that's in the. Therefore, I think that the word Bahem is really referring to the Makablim. Yeah, that in them it's completely Behelim the Seichel Arav. V'gam eichel Maturgaman, Seichel Arav oimeid bepinas havdolah. Even the Gabi dat Maturgaman, or the Seichel Arav, is also Bahem in Ayin van havdolah. Because if it weren't, if he was just massing the whole Shleimus at a Seichel Arav, then he'd be in a similar situation. It would be hard for him to get it out to the people. And therefore we have to say that the Seichel Arav is Makifalov. It stands in a Reben van Havdolah. What actually enters, and that enters into his Kalim and his Chushim. It's not the pshat that the etzem hashpoah that he got from the Rav, but that comes into Chusha. The me'achas she'achushim shloi einam k'moi chushi ha'chochom. These chushim are not like the chushi ha'chochom. And here we see the trick. The achushim shloi yesh lem erech el makablim yesem me'elam ha'mashpiyah. Here's the interesting view. The Rebbe said he's more shocked to the people than he is to the Rav. In other words, we have to say that if we would say that he's really more shocked to the Rav than he is to the Makablim, or a philo, we would tell him that he's mamish like be'emta. I mean, if it would be possible, as I said, he's mamish chotzi, then it's fast that he wouldn't so be able to get to the people. The Dahainu, that the Erech here was a tremendous distance of Erech. In other words, that the Mayhem, like the Lashon has it, it's maybe a little difficult for us to picture. We have to remember that in those days it wasn't at all like we have, the possibilities that there are for teaching people and informing people of information and things like it is today is just immense. I mean, it's bilti mukbal, even before the computer age, it was getting that way. But now with this whole, the computers and the whole thing, I mean, it's kimat ein ma'atzur, what an uninformed person can inform himself, which are very strong and very fundamental, etc., etc. All the Svarim have been translated into his language. Ich weiß mit what. The erech of a person listening nowadays might not be the huge erech that it was in those days. We have to remember that in those days people, if they didn't know, they didn't know. They didn't have Svarim, they didn't have anything. There was no way that they would be able to come to know what is, even halachas, what is simple vinyan. And so, we find, the tremendous hebdel being Amoret, Afil Elishesfeich, Sofik Amoret, Fuchulu in the Gemara, that it was a tremendous hebdel. There were people just, they couldn't really be suspected, or they couldn't really be taken as knowing certain things. And if you were going to be choishish them, then you had to be choishish l'tzad shlili al derech haro, because it was saying a royach. Even just the knowledge of pshutei inyanim and pshutei amakoyres v'chulu. And therefore, says the Rebbe, if you've got a man that he's going to talk to the people, he's got to really be close to them, because if he'll be close to the Rav, even though he won't be mamish the Rav Klal, then he's going to be too high for these Makablim. The Herv of the Erech is so immense, and therefore we have to say that he's closer to them than what he is to the Rav. Okay, so the Rebbe, Ein Ashpoah Yechol Lovoy B'chushim Shaloi. And therefore, even Legabi him, since he's much closer to the people, so just that he's higher than they are, then the Ashpoah from the Rav can't go directly into him. I feel it'll be a little bit mitzamtzim itself yeah, and how they could lose a bit of its teikif, yeah, b'derech ha'islavshus etzloi. It can't do that. Rach, mashe mekabel ha'ashpoa, avoloi shtishtane lefi erakusha. It's not that it just the seichel becomes a little bit mishtane in order to enter his chushim. So, in other words, that if we say that something is mishtane in order to enter another, and I'll tell you the van oil kli. Now we talk about in the van Elul all over. The shinui is only a shinui be'erach. It's not a shinui otzim. Mamera the Indian was mitzamtzim. V'yoyred almanas lehimatzei b'teich kli or b'teich hamakabu v'kayich b'zeh. That means that the shinui is mishtana lefi erach achushim. So in Elul the Olul is korevel ha'ile. Over here, since Sokosov he's closer to the people than he is the Rav, then there's no way that shefa which is coming from the Rav can really be nishtane lefi Kelev v'chushav, because it's just too much for Kelev v'chushav. It's not shayt that it should be mishtane bo even kozeh. Kim zeu masher miseichel hamashpia shemekabel nimtzo etzloi sichli shezeu shemashpia. The Rebbe said what happens is that there's a min arikot, there's a min amtzor mesuya, which means al derech we say v'chochma me ayin timotei. But that's not a Inyan van Seder, it's not a Inyan van Seder Vatroge, but we say here we got the Inyan van Chochma Shebekes, Ches Shebechokma, and then we say that Chochma Me'ayin Timotei, all of a sudden you got a Inyan van Chochma which comes by even Shel Helium, V'derech Hamtzor, not V'derech Ishtalshus or V'derech Gilur. And that's what we say, Chochma Me'ayin Timotei, it's in from Matzia. Although you find a Matzia, that's a Tova that came now into the scene, which wasn't noticeable Begoli prior to that. That's all in the Matzia. And what happens is, Lefise, that the Seichel of the Maturgiman is Mamti, but the Hamtzor, the Seichel of the Mashpia is Mamti, a new Inyan, which is B'derech Chochma Me'ayin Timotei. In other words, it's just like a Chochma Me'ayin Timotei. I'm not trying to say Cholila that that's another Inyan. Yeah, the Pnimis and the Nekuda from the Zach is, yeah, it's Mi'inyan, and that's a Gilui from the Inyan Kavashu. Although it comes by even Shal Nekuda and by even Shal Hevdala Erech from how it is in the market. So similarly here, it's a very big Chiddush. It's an amazing beer in the Inyan. That so of course it's not that the Rav just goes down into the Maturgiman, nor the Rav as it were waits, or he gives forth the Seichel, yeah, and hopes, and it's kilo. There's a certain what you might call almost here Ayin, which is outside of the koiches of both of them, which happens here mitzad the valadosi de kavona, and they're bottled to the kavona. If Amir the Eivishter makes it, it becomes like a derech hamtzor, yeah, from the chokmas and so we have to say that that's b'koyach harav sokoso, that's another inyan in the greatness of the Rav. Not just that he's a mensch what he knows in Yonim, but he's devoted and he's so bottled kol inyonai is that sokoso this should come over to the Am, and sokoso the ganze tachlis of Torah, that it should be near mitzvah of Torah uir that has to light up the world. If Amir helps the Rebishter and he's miskavin and he's bottled ad kedikach to the amitis harotzen, that when he gives forth Ayin, it sort of clicks in a way that it's going to go over b'derech hamtzor to the makabel. But it's a inyan zgulati, it's not a inyan b'derech gilui or ishtalshim. Amamira said the Rebbe, let's take a dogma to that inyan. He said, ukamoi shemi inyan echad bo oid inyan. That from one inyan comes another inyan. So now that's written in a Kitzur Ma'id, and in some of in Pasha Vayishlach over there's a big Sograim over there for Inyan Zeh. So the Rebbe is mazur that what he means is, what does he mean by me'inyan echad bo oid inyan? Sometimes we see that in the Pilpul Asfaras and in the Diyun in a Inyan, that you move from the Inyan where you were, and all of a sudden you can see how that becomes comparable to another Inyan, and that will be Meir and even Mamtzi Achidish Legabi Adova Shekwayadua. You already know that other Inyan. Oh, but this Inyan is now Meir a certain Ashpor into that other Inyan. So what happens is that from one Seichel you've now moved into and you've been goyim a new seichel, as it were, which is really shaykh le'inyan acher, which means that it's not the whole teikah for the seichel you started with, because it's all relating to another inyan, and it's really produced another inyan. So that means it's really the other inyan now. If you take that seichel, that's really the other inyan. It's not the original inyan. But if it weren't for the original inyan, you wouldn't have klal had that inyan. It comes one into the other. So the Rebbe says, man, that in that marshal, you're talking about two siklim. You're talking about one seichel produced a seichel b'neger inyan acher, or was meir inyan acher, or produced a chiddush mi'atzmai. He said, what you got to do now is go back and take that type of comparison into one inyan, as I stated at some point. In other words, at Kilu, what's happened here is the same type of inyan, where one inyan produces another inyan. That's happening here inside one inyan. In other words, that this is really like a ha'ora bilvad, which is led into another inyan. So really, what you've done now, you've moved into the other inyan. If you take that other inyan, you're in that inyan, you're not here anymore. Of a vitana shady, where did that come from? And what is it really? It's really come from the inyan there. But now you're being oisik by inyan acher. Amamira dort in the etzem moshel, you're takabing oisik by inyan acher. Here you're not being oisik by inyan acher, but you're being oisik by inyan acher. You're being oisik in not the same uimek and the same fanem of the ashpor. You've already come to a new, as it were, al deradugma, as if you've moved into another inyan. Come on, not a inyan zar. You have moved into a door, which is not that inyan, but it's like as if you moved into another field of discussion, and you're only borrowing it, you're only using the nakud of this inyan to be mashpia. Emamila, that's how the Rebbe's mazur over there in Samavot. Once again, we see that we're dealing with a shinui, which is not b'derech hishtaushus, b'derech gilui, madrega b'derech gilui ba'olah or kiru, but on the other hand, it's cholila, not a dover zah. No, it's like how one inyan is moved in order to get closer to another tachlis, which is it's moved almost into another inyan. In other words, that the way the chacham maturgiman, the way he is makabel, he's almost makabel like another inyan. It's not cholila that he is, but he gets it for even kazeh, that it's like kilos and medaber almost in another oifen than how it is mamish by the Rav. Well, what's the uftu from them fitzes adova? The uftu from them is that he's now able to take that mamish and he can put that mamish into kelev chushov and he can be mekabel. Oh, it's not that the Rav went down but kilu and was mishana the inyan l'tzoyrich kelim v'choshim shaloi. The inyan underwent a kfitzes ha'era kilo be'emtza for his sake. The inyan we just saw inyan zeh bo oid inyan over there. If the Rebbe just puts it in there, the way that you almost left to understand it, mi'atzmucho, and dort in some of his marish, be'inyan common sentences over there. Harei, shegam eichel ha'maturgiman, oimed ashpoas arov ba'adol. That takes us back to what we just said. The tzokos of the seichel of the maturgiman is the seichel of the Rav is mamish ba'adola umakif of the seichel of the maturgiman. Umasha mashpia Eloham hurach masha nimto miseichel harav seichel eichel maturgiman. In other words, it's a hamtzah. Al derech we said achokma me'ayin timo. So it's a certain features ha'erech. It's not mamish ayin from kashpor mikiru. He said, where we have to say that where one Indian produces a Nakuda legabe another Indian, that's also not necessarily a Indian for Kiro. That's also that if you've used one Indian into another Indian, then you have to realize that the Pnimis v'Atzmis for them Seichel is in Yonehu. Well, that what it's made into another Indian, that's mitzad the Shleimer and the Koyach of that Hasoga, of it's only as it were a Ha'olah Bulvad, but Derek Fitzes from the immediate Samusag. So it's very interesting that when you're playing with Ashpoas of one Seichel and another Seichel, then Sokosot the Shleimus of that Indian always remains binyonehu, as they come to it. And what it's mashpir into another Indian, even though it can be marshir, that other Indian, of as long as there are two inyonim, and so what one gives into the other, but that's another Indian, that's only b'derech hamtzor sa'erech, not mamish b'kiru v'shefa. That's a very fascinating thing. As they come to it.
Could you bring an example of from one Indian comes another?
Yeah, like we said, we already were masbred. And each masbred there in Samavol, what happens is that sometimes you understand a certain Indian, and then you use that to be moisif into another Indian, to give you a certain chidush or hamtzua chadosh, or a ha'ora, legabi another Indian. And that happens a lot in different sections. I often say that if we understood this, this is what we come to this maskona here. Maybe over here we can borrow from that. We can say that in Cain, that'll be moisif a one and another. What we're saying here, what the Rebbe is saying is that those are two inyan. That's an inyan. Shleimus of that Asoga and its Atzmiyas is its own in. But there in it say its Atzmiyas is its own in. If it's mashpia into another cycle, even lights up a certain Nakuda, which is moisif me, a certain Gishmak or a certain Chova, in that other in or a certain Prat I might have taken into account. Even when I get a Poyal. He said that's only a in of an Hamtzor Sa'erech. It's not the immediate Pnimis v'Atzmis, so that muscle is going over here.
So it's a hefsek.
Yeah, it's a that's what we're talking about. We're talking about the whole unit of a hefsek.
No, you're saying here the sugar base.
No. You got to drop them. That we just said one of the two inyonim. And now we're talking about the two inyonim. Now we're doing the first one first, and we'll come to the second. We're dealing with the mamutza mafsik, my boy. This whole business of mamutza mafsik.
I thought you said the rope was. I thought the rope was the mafsik, and this is the second time.
No. The rope was mafsik. That was just a dugma gashmi. Now we're talking about the chacham hamaturgam and he's mamish hefsik be'emtzah. You've just been you've been working under the wrong impression. Cholilu, that wasn't the kavanah. We just first of all we stayed there with two in Yonim, and we just said, you do it. And we hooked on the Inif and Al Derech Moshe. In other words, we're dealing with each one with Ne'atzmi. But this is the Mamutza Masik, not the Mamutza Atzmi. Amamir Kunta is that what the Rebbe says is that the Seichel Arab has undergone a Hamtzua and a Derech Avdolah Sa'erech in such a way that it's become shy to the Chushim of the Maturgaman, and therefore it's mislavish because it's already coming as how even that it's moved all be'erech from the Seichel Arab, albeit it's like a miseichel Arab, and it's in your Panimi, so of course remains not a dovazah. וכמי שמינין ומה שמשפיע על העם הוא רק מה שנמצא משכל הרב, שכל עצם המתורגמן. ומכל מוקים אין זה שכל המתורגמן מצד עצמי. It's not just what the Seichel HaMeturgeman would have told the people. No, it's what he got. Ki Masha Bo Miseichel HaMashpia. It comes into the Seichel HaMeturgeman. So it comes to we're earning here on all fronts. Mitzad Echad is not Seichel HaDarav. Mitzad Hasheni is not the Seichel HaMeturgeman. If he would try to explain it to the people, he would probably be mistabik. He has to get it from the Rav. Or he gets in the Rav, and not even Avdol Sa'erech. And therefore it's created Mishlavish Etzloi. And then he gives it over to the people. Why? Because he's Korev Ela Aman. Once it's entered these Chushim, then we can be sure it's going to reach the Chushim of the people. And Mamish, we dance on about 3 chasnas here. And we dance on the chasna of the people, we dance on the chasna of the Maturgaman, and we dance on the chasna of the Shinui from the Mashpia, or the Etzem Seichel Arab, into the Chushim of the Maturgim. And that's also a very fascinating Indian Bifnei Atzmai. It's like the Indian from the Chochmah Me'ayin Timotze, but even Masuyam. And it's like, and there's kama limudim with it, there's kama nekudas, what they come out, that each Indian in Musogim and in Tzeichel, Ekshu mitzad shleim sinyonei, is mudu be'er from another Indian. And if one is taki, mashpia and kilo looks of it bringing to another Indian, it's not really. That's the Indian atzmi b'fnei atzmi. It doesn't say negina. Amitis amuska. This Indian can give over a certain tuf time, but that's also b'derech hadolah suyim al derech v'dinim from Chochmah Me'ayin Timotze. V'ayim mashu kosim mizeh b'drush yontav shel rosh reish amuvo. That's in Pasha Vayishlach, if you want to look it up. It's in Pasha Vayishlach, Korev l'hascholas hadrush. And over there, it's a very similar beer, except for that whole piece where he puts in about miseichel echad bo oidinyan. That is masber over there, more barichas in the sograim over there. The dogma from this Indian is in the beginnes hamamutza, the kesa elyoin, the beginnes atik, who neta v'nivdo legamre. In the dogma of Islam, or that kutcher iloa that we saw, the etzem iskashas that they ain't safe, mit the ilam asamikablim, or that's nivdo legamre. Rakshimimenu nimtzo beginners oireiste arich, and we saw that in the middle is chokhmaste. Well, that was all we saw earlier in Reish Dalar over there. Even in the middle, there has to be the Indian of Chokhmah Stimor, and that's al deravi the Indian from Chokhmah Me'ayin Timor. Say first from Atik, it's mislabish in Chokhmah Stimor, and then from Chokhmah Stimor, it's b'derech hamtzoah into the Indian from Chokhmah Giluya. So that fits in nicely with the concept of even Habir. Rakshi Mimenu Nimcho beginnes Eures de Arik. Komish Kosu, Be'et Chaim Sham Memel Perik Gimel. So Masha Meir Bener Tzolim. Or that which has come over into the Inu van Arik, or that's what sockles off Meir in the Ner Tzolim. Or Mikom Mokim Zehu Alidei Shebchinas Ayin Seiv. Naast beginnes artikelen, vele meerders. De Haraya Ayin Seif mitad atzmei movdo legamre. We enu be'erach de hatoche klau. Commission is borli u perikutov kuf tzadik wow. Validei shenas beginnes atik hine oires anim tzoim mimenu. Shezo beginnes arik u shemeir bener tzorim. Now, this is the whole Torah b'fnei. What the emphasis is, we learned that Perik Kutzalikov, but that was Harikot Ashena Po Chadoshim Tzirik. We learned that in him. So basically, what we see is, what the Rebbe is saying here is that Afila Atik, I feel that when we say Atik, we say Kutra Iloa da Atik, or that is really a Yerida of a kilo ashpola legavi the ain't safe mamash. And from ain't safe, there's no way that you can have arik. You can't get from ain't safe to arik cloud. So even though atik be'etzem dargosei is moved over from arik, over how did the whole thing of arik become possible? Al yedei that the ain't safe went into atik. So in other words, it's one other. The word atik has got itself two directions. Mitzad echad atik can be moved over near attack. Yeah, me amakablim mela. But also by ya take mishom, how he moved from there over to there. And that's the other view in the word atik. In other words, that the unit of atik means that he came down over from there over there here. In other words, that the etzem fact that the Eir ain't safe went down into Atik, even though Atik is never lived over Ne'atak Me'arik. Or that made possible that Arik should come into being. If it hadn't been there, if the Ein Seif hadn't moved into the Inuvan from Atik into this Kutra Elul, there wouldn't have been shot the whole in the finale. Because Erein Seif Mitzadatzma is Mudo Betachasato. But that's the word Kesher. What Kesher provides, the Tzokosov, I'm binding myself up in even the kilo, I'm using something to bind me up. Yeah, even though, because I think just in its own self doesn't have a Kesher. A Kesher is when you become involved in a certain chut that binds you to a Inyam. The whole Inyam of an Eid Seif, Shleimusa, the Koila has no Shaykhah. Ari couldn't have possibly been. Ali Day was as though the etzem yerida vashpola, all the Ein Seif into Atik, or even though Atik is not nivdal gamli miari, or if it hadn't been for that, that wouldn't have been. In other words, does it kimat that should become impossible? That's the etzem meaning of the yerida possibility, and the yerida into the Kutra Elul, which made it possible that there should be Dana finale. We have to say that in the Moshul, or the Rav, is noite, and he wants to give over, and he's moyed the but somehow or another there was shaykhs to the arm. It's natia rotzen on the part of the Derish to make himself shaykh somehow to the people, even though the way he does that is still within himself, and he's still do better, and therefore you got to get down there all the way to the people. You have to have in the middle the Stova Hamakasha, or the Maturgaman. The Maturgaman is not Mamish Arich, and he's not Mamish Atik. That's what we saw, that the Emerson Makasha is really the meaning of the But Al Koponim, we see that if it weren't for the Yerida and the Ashpora into Atik, then that wouldn't have been Chayat the Gansarini. But that's what we saw. The Pnimis Atik, how do we say? The Pnimis Atik, who Pnimis Abba. That's of course the Pnimis Atzmias, so the Gansarini from Atik is really Pnimis Achopma. Why did the Eivishter move? Why did he make that tremendous tainuk within himself? That he should be miskasha and yored klape. The Elam was bliko shinoi be'atzmei adayin. Aval chaponim with a inif and yerida klape natia klape there. So that was we should reach chokma geluya, and that should be the kansarini from the Tachlis HaKavana. Where's that Tachlis HaKavana? In the Kutra Elul, in the etzim miskashas. And that's Indian from Pnimis Abe, who Pnimis Atik. That's what we had over there in that Indian. David Zahofen, so say now with Gold Katzlach. It's now I just wanted to ask you guys, Charlotte, a little bit later we have to talk more, but it's Ben Zion mentioned to me, I don't know if you guys know anything about the guys who live in Kochbad. Ben Zion mentioned there was some plumber here in Kochbad that he was very reliable and people like him. Using a plumber, installator. Anybody know who that is?
Joe Friedman?
That's Joe Friedman. I don't know Joe Friedman well. I know Joe Friedman. What's Joe Friedman? I can talk with him. I can maybe ask him.
It's best to ask Ben Sion directly.
Right, who he met. Because he called me up the other day, Ben Sion, and he gave me a whole big torture. There's a tremendous installator here in Kochbad. Everybody uses him and everybody knows him. And he's a Chochem Godel in installator. So I said, foolishly, I was just feeling so poorly. I didn't say who is it. I didn't ask him who it was. Because unfortunately I had this meeting with this guy and I can't get any sense out of him. He's loeg, who maligo kolein. This morning a piece of the ceiling actually fell. A little windy piece of the actual ceiling began to fall. So now I'm in a shukir absolutely. The whole house is so to speak. And outside on the outside wall there's a whole damp patch, you can see it. A whole big damp patch on the outside wall of the house.